Hey, everybody. Hey, I'm getting a bunch of questions on just simply how to read from the file. Um, this is really COMPSC 110 material. I'll review it real quick, but if you're struggling with this still, you really need to review this immediately because we're 2 courses past that now, and you shouldn't still be wrestling with something that's in chapter 5 of the book. So let's take a look real quick at what we can do for file operations, and then we'll do some coding. So first, we're going to go to my iPad here, and let's suppose that we have got a database comprised of records, and each record has got 4 data elements: price, description, quantity, and part number. So that's what these are here. So here's a double representing the price. Here is a description, so it's a string representing the description. This would be an integer for the quantity on hand, and then here's a part number, and that would be a string since we've got a mixture of characters and digits. So given those, we've got to make some choices about, well, what instruction do we use to extract this data? So with this double, of course, we can use cin, and whenever I say cin, I'm also referring to fn. Those are the exact same thing. We're just happen to be changing the source of the data from the console to the file. So anytime I say cin, there's going to be interchangeable with fn. Now our description, of course, since it can contain spaces, then we'll want to use getLine for that. GetLine will extract a whole line of data, including spaces. Cin does not get spaces. Int here, we'll use cin for that, but then take a look at our string for the part number. We do know a little bit about our database ahead of time, and that is that the part numbers never contain spaces. So we can go ahead and actually use cin here to read that string. All right, so that's what we're going for. Let me shift over now to my IDE, and it will show that we have got this database, just like I had written. So there's one record in the database with those 4 data elements. And let's remember, double, string, int, string. Double, string, int, string. So now our challenge is, let's read not only that record, but this second record, and then this third record. Let's come up with a way to read this entire database. So this code here is going to do that for us. Let's take a careful look at this. First, we've got our normal housekeeping stuff up here. And I've got just some local variables declared where we can store those 4 data elements. Now, since we know something about our database, we know that price comes first, and we can just simply use a while loop to extract that price. Now, I've seen some code, and some students are really making this extraordinarily complicated. The while loop is smart enough to be able to detect end of file. When you use while loop in a conjunction with this while loop data extractor, and that's the extractor operator, the 2 greater than signs, it automatically detects end of file and stops trying to do an extraction when end of file is reached. So you don't need any other code in there, such as while fin.good or while not fin.eof, things like that. You can just use this extractor like this, and it's going to work just fine. So there was our first extraction happening, fin with price. Next, we have to do, that only extracts price. We still have these 3 elements to extract. So description, quantity, and a part number. Now description, we've got to use getLine like we just said. And then for quantity and part number, we can use fin for both of those. So here's both of those combined into one statement. And then here, I'm just going to simply count all 4 of those data elements, and then we should get all of them. So let's run this, and we'll see that we have an issue. We do successfully extract a price here, but we don't successfully extract anything else beyond that. And that's because of this cin.ignore issue. In a nutshell, it would really behoove you to go read that in the book. In a nutshell, though, when you do a cin operation, just the data is extracted, And the end line character, you know, when you press 142 enter, or if you're reading from a file, it'll have 142 and then the return character. Fin and CN only read the data, and it leaves the end line character in the keyboard buffer unprocessed. And this is a problem because then the next instruction, the get line, says, all right, I need some input. It turns to the keyboard buffer. And as soon as it encounters the end line character, it says, okay, the input's done. So what's there in the keyboard buffer? The end line character. So get line there says, okay, I'm going to take that end line character and assume that the extraction is complete, and it assigns nothing to description. And that's why we got nothing in the output there. So that's what you have to remember as far as cin.ignore. Anytime you have a cin followed by a get line somewhere in your code, between those two statements, you've got to have your cin.ignore. So here, I'm going to add in fin ignore, and you'll see how the behavior changes. Now we've got all three records successfully being read from the database. Okay? So that is fine for if our very first data element is a double. I'm going to shift this up a little bit to where the very first data element is actually going to be the part number. I'm sorry, the part description. Just like this. So our new order in the database is going to be description, price, quantity, part number. So just to remind ourselves, I'm going to put that as a comment down there. Description comes first, followed by price, followed by quantity, followed by part number. So let's remember, make sure we remember that order. Now, this isn't going to work anymore having fin and price, and nor is it going to work if we had fin description like this, because fin won't read those white spaces. So we've got to use get line. Just like that. And what this does is it uses get line as part of the while loop extractor. And while loop still is smart enough to know, all right, this is going to keep going until we hit end of file. Now, because we've got the get line done, description first, we can really do this. We can have a single fin statement to extract price followed by quantity followed by part number. And that's because we, on the iPad, we talked about how we can make those choices for that. So let's figure out if this is going to work or not. So I'm going to run it. And it looks like we still have issues. And this would give you a very, very odd collection of behaviors, and trying to figure this out would be really challenging, except if you realize, okay, I have got cin followed by get line here. How does that work? Well, the very first thing encountered is a get line. Then we're in the while loop. Then we encounter the cin, fin, but then the loop goes back and we encounter a get line followed by an fin. So what do we have right here with these two? We've got a cin followed by a get line. And that's then the problem where we have to go ahead and flush that keyboard. So if I throw in an fin ignore after, come on. If I throw in that fin ignore afterward, you'll see that we'll get the whole thing here. Come on, this has got to. All right, there we go. Sometimes Cloud9 likes to just kind of trip out. And so there was a trip out moment on me. But here you can see that I added the fin ignore. And if we were to list the order of operations for this entire program, we'd see we'd have a get line, a fin, a get line, a fin, all the way down. And as part of that, we do have a cin followed by a get line. So that's where you put the fin ignore in this point, in this case, at the very end of the while loop, so that it comes before the next iteration's get line. So then when we run this here, you can see that we do get the entire database written out here. All right, so that's the quick primer on then how to just read these values successfully into our code. Now, of course, you'll have to figure out, we've already covered this too in some previous primers, but you'll have to successfully then get all of these input into the array of objects that we create. Okay, I hope this helps. Good luck. See ya.